The launch strategy of the phone. This is a story where we started working with a different community. The Insider program was part of the success of our launch campaign. It was about talking to people who are Ubuntu enthusiasts, part of the community, but also people who are outside of the Ubuntu community. We wanted, as I said before, that the message came from within the heart of the community and not directly from Canonical. We wanted these insiders to essentially spread the word for us and share their excitement with others. So what we did was to create a group of 30 individuals who were getting early information and, well, these tidbits of information before anyone else. These are people who are not just getting excited about this, they're asking us about more and more every time. And they also manage to figure out things even before we make them public to them, which is something that's quite, well, that's quite compelling, I'd say. And sometimes you really feel, I don't know, really proud about the commitment, about the passion that everyone is showing. And also not only about the commitment, but also the talent and how these people manage to do this before anyone else.
Unless you are the developer who accidentally leaked a new name of a new device in his Pastebin post.
That happens. So yeah, everyone's watching Launchpad, where we keep our source code for commits. So the community has eyes. So this was a mixed group of individuals. It was not about developers. It was more about, well, it was, I'll say, it was a mix. There were developers, there were bloggers, there were YouTubers, there were people who were not usually trying Ubuntu, but had been talking about Ubuntu. Their curiosity had been piqued by this new thing from this relatively small company coming into a big market. One thing that's been very important as well is this bit here. One thing where the insiders have been very, very helpful is to provide early feedback, especially on the first ever launch that we had, where the insiders were getting devices in advance. They were doing the reviews, and they were telling us, hey, this is not working. This is not something that we can do. This totally broke. You need to fix this. So things like that were really, really important before we launched to a bigger audience. So the insiders is something that we're still continuing. We've expanded the group. Some of them are not as active as before. Some of them are not with us anymore, as in the insiders. But some of them have come new as well.
Where's my photo?
It will come. All right. Yeah, I'll try to find an embarrassing photo of Tsuji event to show it as well later on. All right. Oh, sorry. And I won't go into this into detail on this. I just want to provide a glimpse of the phones that we've got on the market right now. I don't want to go into specs. If you're interested in this, you can find more detailed information on the internet, on the Ubuntu site or on the BQ site. That's our first ever phone. That was the BQ Aquarius E4.5, and that's actually my phone. That's the phone that I use every day. And I haven't upgraded to a more powerful one. I'm quite happy with it. I started my journey with Ubuntu with the Nexus 4. The Nexus 4 was the reference, or is still the reference device, and I was using it during development to test it. And I could still use it. I mean, it's still, I say, it's still the hardware reference, and it's still being actively developed. But having been working as part of the community for the phone, I just wanted to have it as a milestone. I didn't even want to get it from Canonical. I wanted to buy one on the flash sales as well. By the way, that was another part of the campaign which we innovated. Some people found it cool. Some people found it not so cool, because the first flash sales, and a flash sale is essentially us or BQ announcing in a few hours of advance that, hey, the phone is available online, and then everyone going to the site, which sometimes doesn't work that well. I mean, on the first one, I think we saturated the BQ servers for a few hours. On the second one, we learned a bit, so yeah, there was more beefier resource on the servers, and it did work better. So yeah, so these were the flash sales for you. We're not doing flash sales anymore. We might do them actually if we next time we'll bring a device. But right now these phones are available if you want to buy them online on the BQ store. The second phone that we did with BQ was the Aquarius E5, which is an upgrade from the E4. It's essentially one with a bigger screen and with I think it's got bigger internal flash as well. But essentially, for me, the most important things of the E5 is the bigger screen and in particular the better camera. But they're really nice devices. I like the way BQ take care of the small details as well. And finally, the Meizu MX4. This is a much beefier device. This is one device that makes Ubuntu on phones justice. The MX4 is actually sold out right now, so it's difficult to get them unless you get them in the black market or eBay. But yeah, it's a really nice device. And I haven't got one myself, but I've seen some of you guys were playing with them last night at the pre-event gathering, or even today, and it's a really cool phone. All right, so we enter into. Someone's getting excited about the phone. We enter into one of the other pillars of the phone proposition, and that's one part where, keeping with the motto of being bold, we didn't just want to go with the upgrade. We just knew that this wouldn't work. We didn't want to be another Android, another iOS. We could make it in technical terms, but that wouldn't bring any value to a new phone. It would be something else that's exactly the same. So enter scopes. Scopes are essentially new UI paradigm. If you guys are familiar with Scope, with Ubuntu on the desktop, with the Dash, you'll be familiar with the concept about scopes. But on the phone, it's essentially taking scopes to the next level. Scopes are essentially your home screens when you unlock the phone, which bring you all of the content. We always say when we talk about scopes that content is king. So we wanted to have an experience where you didn't have to open different apps to get to different things. If you want to access your music, if you are using Spotify, if you're using another service that you're interested in, you should be able to just open your phone and essentially go for it, rather than just trying to search for apps, looking at the grid, opening an app, and having an experience that's not consistent. One of the other things that scopes bring is this organic, more consistent experience. You see, what we've got here are different scopes for different types of content. We've got the shopping scope, which connects to Amazon, eBay, and other shopping sites. We've got photos, which shows you your pictures, shows you pictures from other online services as well. So it's about showing your local content and remote content as well. News, nearby, dashboard. The nearby one is a really nice one as well. It aggregates and combines different sources to show you, according to your location, the things that you can find nearby. You can, for example, say, I'm hungry, and it will show you all of the restaurants that are in the vicinity. You can say, I need to check, I'm warm or whatever, and it will show you any content that's relevant to the query or to your state, essentially. So yeah, for example, how are you? I'm bored, I'm hungry, I'm on the road, I'm stressed, and it will show you spas and things like that. So essentially, that's one of the mottos that we use for our marketing campaign as well. Life at your fingertips. It's essentially about using the gestures to get to your content quickly and in a way that's intuitive. As I was saying before, it was very much about shifting away from the app script. It was about creating our own story, not going with the rest. It was not going to be a replica of Android. It was not going to be being able to run applications from Android. It was not going to be us developing applications for someone else. This was about Ubuntu. And that was one area where we noticed that there's not been innovation in the, well, ever since the phone revolution, so smartphone revolution came, essentially. And applications come from different vendors, come from different developers, and provide an experience that's not as homogeneous as WinScopes. And finally, that's one very important bit, and one that carriers told us that was very, very important for them. And for us, it's also important because we are an open source system, and we want to make sure that we won't feed the monopoly of someone else interested on the phone. We don't feed the monopoly of other platforms. So this is about essentially giving the ability to developers or service providers to own the service layer, essentially being able to bring their content through scopes. We've got different types of scopes. We've got the aggregation scopes, which essentially bring different sources together. So for example, on my music, I can see the music that I've got locally in here, and luckily this is not anything embarrassing. We've got music from SoundCloud, which means it mixes content from online services, and the same for video and shopping. It's essentially the same paradigm. One interesting about scopes as well is that if you're a scope developer, you can tag scopes to be part of the default experience, meaning when you buy a phone from BQ, Meizu, or Beat, whichever manufacturer, it will come with pre-installed scopes, which will be these aggregation scopes. So, for example, if you're a developer who has, for example, you might have a website that delivers video or stream feeds, whatever, and you'd like to be part of the video scope. You can add keywords to your scope to say video, for example, and it will appear in the video scope. So your content will be easily surfaced to users on the default experience. So yeah, they're not only very attractive visually, but they're also very attractive for those developers or for those online services who want to promote their content as well. And then the next step is the branded scopes. Branded scopes are essentially standalone scopes, which ultimately will be mixed inside one of those aggregation scopes. As the name says, you can have your brand in here. If you're a well-known brand, then you'll use your logo, obviously. But also, if you're a smaller website or a small developer who offers a service, you'll be able to brand your scope in whichever way you want. Scopes are also very interesting for developers because they are easy to develop on the visual side of things. So all of the things that you see in here, as a developer, you don't have to take care of the presentation. The presentation layer is taking care of scopes. As a developer, you only need to make sure that the scope, that the backend of the scope talks to your API. So actually, you need two things. You need to have an API that's open and a way to talk to that API. And that's what you'll be doing when developing scopes for Ubuntu. And for the technically oriented, this is how a scope works. Essentially, scope is a small search engine. It's a way to essentially search for something, to provide a query, and then getting the results. So on the video example, as a user, I would be looking for, of course, cat videos. So I'd search for them in here. And what the scopes registry, or what the backend of the scopes would be doing, would be to send the query to all scopes. The video scope is an aggregating scope, remember, and it contains small standalone scopes. It will send this query to all of the scopes that are part of the umbrella video scope, which would return these results, which ultimately would be surfaced in different categories in here. So, for example, my videos would query the local videos that I've got on my device, and it would show my videos. Actually, if I've got any cat videos, of course, they will appear in here. there's also the popular clips scope. Then the popular clips results would come up here in this section. And as I said, these sections are predefined. So when you're defining the UI of a scope, what you'd be doing would be to tell, essentially tell the UI how you want your scopes to be displayed. So you don't have to take care of how many pixels that wide is or how many results. You'd say, I want 4 results, I want a vertical 2-column grid, and that's it. So it's very, very easy. I haven't been developing scopes for a while, but I think you use a JSON file to define that. All right. As I was saying before, this was a phone that we wanted to be attractive for developers because we love developers. And we wanted to make sure that they had everything that they needed from the start to start creating applications. It was actually quite nice because right from the start, as we chose a platform that's, or as we chose a framework that's cross-platform, Qt, the Qt project, and Qt Quick or QML. Right from the start, as a developer, you could create your applications and get them running on your PC. They perhaps wouldn't adapt that well to that environment, but you could get them running, and you could see even before having an actual device how they worked, how they would perform, which ultimately you would do by sending them to a phone and then running them in there. So from the start, we set out to have a full Ubuntu SDK. For us, it was really important to have an end-to-end developer story from design, from concept to design to implementation to distribution, meaning that we want to have a full Ubuntu SDK. We think it's important for developers to have a native SDK. We just didn't want to leave them on their own. I know there are other platforms which are perhaps more flexible, and they've chosen the path of essentially telling them, the developers, here's how you do things, but you can use any tool. We wanted, not to leave them on their own. So that's why we had been working on the Ubuntu SDK, which was work that we did on top of Qt Creator, the official Qt project IDE. That was another really important premise. Native and web apps are first-class citizens. We want to have a really, really polished native experience for app developers, but also at the same time make sure that those who are developing web apps, HTML5 apps from other platforms, could easily port their applications to Ubuntu as well. We've got a website with extensive documentation and tutorials. Importantly, we've got detailed online app design guides which explain essentially, or provide guidelines rather, on how to organize your UI for the full Ubuntu experience and for better integration. We've got an online store as well. As I said before, we didn't want to go for the apps grid, but we recognized that still, while focusing on scopes, it was important to start with apps, to make sure that existing developers could start with something that's familiar to them, and then evolve to create scopes or to combine scopes with their applications. I mean, there's still a valid reason for applications in Ubuntu, and it's nice to see that results from a scope can be combined with an app. So, for example, Telegram. We've got the Telegram scope, which shows you all of the messages that you've received recently, which gives you a really easy way to have a glimpse of what's been going on recently. But if you want to write back, well, actually, you could do it on the scope as well. But if you want a fuller experience, then you can also open the app from the scope. I've talked about developers, I've talked a bit about the community. We'll talk about the community in a minute. And by the way, this is the SDK, what it looks like, coding a scope. And this is the Unity scope tool, which allows you to run scopes on the desktop. So if You are going to take away something from this talk. This is one of the most important slides, perhaps. I was saying before that we embrace different entry points for developers. Scopes, we've talked about them. You can write them in C++ right now, very, very soon in JavaScript, and also already you can write them in Go. I'm particularly very, very excited about the work that we're doing for JavaScript, which will make it much easier to develop scopes for the phone, especially for those who come from a web environment. Lowest effort, no UI. As I said before, it's about choosing templates on how you want to show your content, rather than developing the visual experience yourself. And of course, it provides the greatest visibility, which is when you open your phone, your results are there at the front. HTML5. So HTML5 is what we always call the first-class citizen. Our ultimate goal is that you cannot tell from a native app, or well, from a QML app, let's call it, and an HTML app. So that's why we've got a visual UI toolkit that that has got feature pair with the full native experience. So we've got a UI toolkit created with HTML5 technology, or internet technology, CSS, HTML5, JavaScript, and so on. And then we use PhoneGap and Cordova to provide API access, meaning that from HTML5 apps, you can access camera, you can access sensors, and everything which a few years ago was only possible for those who were using what you call like native APIs. Web apps are again another easy way to provide and create content. Essentially, if you had to summarize them in just one sentence, is a way. If you've got a website, let's take an example, Gmail, that's already providing the whole UI experience there, and you want to bring them quickly to the phone, you can package them in a way which users can consume that application in Ubuntu, but still it behaves exactly like any other app, meaning that it's got security confinement as any other app, it's installable from the store as any other app, and it's isolated from the rest of the applications. Qt QML is what traditionally has been associated with the native approach. QML is a really easy and nice way of creating visual UIs. It's what it's called a declarative language. It's a mixture of CSS, JavaScript. It's not really a mixture, but what I'm trying to say is that it's similar in the syntax to those languages. So it's very intuitive for someone coming from the web world as well. If you need more processing power, if you need to access APIs, or if you need to do some processing that cannot be done with QML and JavaScript, then you can use C++ as well. And in particular, if you're familiar with C++ and if you prefer that from the start, then this is something that you can use. The HTML5 story in more detail. Perhaps I think I might go quickly through this. I'll focus on a couple of points only. As I said before, the HTML5 UI toolkit is looks exactly the same as any other QML application, and it's created with web technologies. It's all containerized, so HTML5 apps are not a browser, are HTML codes put into a container and behaving as an application. And it's not limited to Ubuntu HTML5, so it's easy to port games, for example, who have nothing to do with Ubuntu, which are not using the Ubuntu UI toolkit, and essentially port them to Ubuntu. Platform access. This is again what I said before about accessing sensors, camera, and any resources that traditionally wouldn't be accessible by a web or an HTML5 app. And we do that with open source again. We use the Apache Cordova runtime, which has already a big community behind it, and it's got plenty of APIs to access content or to access resources and devices. Web apps, go into more detail. If you look at the picture, you can take an idea of what a web app is. It's essentially a way of bringing websites, as I've said before. They're extremely easy to publish. We've got even an online creator on developer.ubuntu.com. If you go to developer.ubuntu.com/webapps, you'll find an online generator for web apps, which you can then publish into the store. And again, everything is containerized. So any resources that your web app uses, cookies, history, and more, are not shared with any browser. As I said before, it's got nothing to do with the browser. It's a container that essentially brings your website into the hands of the user. And then QML. Qt is our native approach. You can use it to build UIs. You can combine it with JavaScript and more. And if you've got any questions on this, I'll be happy to answer them later on. And just to finish off the development part, security is very important. It was also one of the premises when we started working on the phone. We wanted applications to be able to use their own resources. We didn't want any application to access anything that was outside its own domain. So applications cannot just grab content from others. So you cannot get a malicious application trying to delete your data, trying to steal your data, essentially. And we do this with AppArmor, which is a way to specify a profile and specify the permissions that an application has. Still, you need to share content between applications. And this is something that we do to our content mediation API, which is called the Content Hub. If you've got more questions about the hub, I'll be happy to answer them later on. Community. We could probably talk about community for the whole hour. I think I'm preaching to the choir as well. I mean, you're part of the community, so it's not something, anything new that I'll be telling you. What I want to focus on is the fact that community makes us what we are. Ubuntu is not just an operating system. It's a huge, huge collaborative project. It's not about development either. There's many, many areas of contribution. If you're a translator, if you're an advocate, if you're a developer, you can essentially make it happen with Ubuntu. It's about doing work together. It's about coordinating. It's about learning together, and it's about growing friendships as well. It's been my first Ubucon here, and I was really happy to see when we were out last night to see the friendships that had been created amongst the German team throughout the years. That is really rewarding to see when you're working in such a project. We've got someone in this picture who's in this room, and I think that's you, Ricardo. So Ricardo Padovani was one of the original crew members of the Core Apps team. When we created the phone, community was at the core as well. We wanted the community to participate and be part of bringing this phone to market. So we created a team of Core App developers who were essentially responsible for creating the applications that would be shipped by default on the phone. Fast forward 2 years after, these people are still with us. These people are still developing music, clock, calendar, notes, and many, many other apps. I'm extremely proud to have been part of this, to have worked with these guys who are not just enthusiastic. You've learned quite a lot on them, and you've seen them grow as well. I remember some people coming like, yeah, I'm not sure if I'm good enough to do this. And then 2 months later, they explain you something which you didn't have a clue about, and you just say, yes, that's right. But yeah, it's been a really, really nice journey. We've got a couple of examples here. Adnan from Morocco was the key responsible for for building our app development story on HTML5. And it was really nice to see that the canonical HTML5 developers often came to him when they had questions, which was something really, really nice to see. Nicholas is also one of our core app developers who wrote the clock application, and then went further and started working on fixing bugs in the platform. Same with other people. Again, I'll mention Ricardo because it's one of my favorite. He's one of my favorite app developers. He's been working on the browser right now, making sure that well, it gets some love essentially. And that's possible in an open environment, in an environment where we're like a family essentially, and engineers are really approachable. We plan in the open, so people know that are part of the project, that are helping making it happen. They know what's going on. They know the roadmap, and essentially, it has to be a rewarding experience for everyone. That's the whole point. Core apps project in numbers: 12 core apps, Deco, the email client, Notes, the Evernote and local notes client, Weather, File Manager, Doc Viewer, and so on. Terminal, we've got a terminal, of course. We're geeks, so that's something that we obviously need. It's actually one of the nicest applications. It even got the attention of the design team, who helped to develop as well, which is quite an achievement, I have to tell you. Yeah, what to say? I think we haven't got anyone on that picture right here other than Ricardo. Well, we've got Daniel, we've got myself, we've got some other people from Canonical as well, but like the bulk of them are people who, that was about 1 year ago. I think it's about a bit more than 1 year ago. And Ricardo was mentioning it at the lunchtime that, yeah, it was a year ago that we were in Washington. That was a sprint where we invited the core app developers to participate with the Canonical team. All right, let me skip a few slides and let's get to what's going to be exciting in the next few months. The road to convergence. Essentially, we will soon be working, or we are already working, and we will soon see a device on the market with a convergent experience. That will be the first test for our convergence story. Essentially, what we want to do is to deliver the same experience that we've got on an Ubuntu PC on a convergent device, meaning that you should be able to use your phone to do all of the things that you would be expecting from your PC. We always have to set the expectation as well. We cannot cover every use case. There will be developers who perhaps won't jump into the convergence story, but essentially we want to focus on an experience that allows users to do their day-to-day work on Ubuntu, but carrying Ubuntu on their pocket. So we want multitasking, anything that you would expect from using Ubuntu today on the desktop. We want both. We not only want productivity, such as LibreOffice, such as Notes, such as I don't know, whichever tool that you use to be productive, essentially. We also want mobility to enter the desktop as well. So you should be able to use your dialer to call from a desktop environment, meaning you'll have your phone, you'll plug it in, you'll put it somewhere where you've got perhaps either a dock or a Bluetooth connection with a monitor and a keyboard, and you'll be able to read your SMS on the big screen, to talk on the phone, and not only have the full desktop experience, but also the mobility experience, the mobile experience as well. And also, that's very important for us as well. We want to bring the two stories together, phone and desktop. So we want to have one story for developers as well. You should develop just one app, which you should be able to run on the desktop and on the phone as well. And thus, you should have a store that provides you this single point to upload and distribute your applications. We want to do convergence right as well, and I'm going to read this quote and highlight the parts that I think are important. A truly converged device that combines mobility and desktop productivity can only be done with an OS built on a single code base. We want true convergence. We don't want some special applications that work only when you connect the monitor. We want all applications. We want the whole experience to work on a big monitor using your phone. We want to combine mobility and desktop productivity. As I was saying before, you should be able to run your phone-specific applications on the phone, sorry, on a desktop environment. And when I say this a desktop environment as well, I mean bigger screen, connectivity with keyboard and pointer and so on. We want to do this with the OS built on a single code base. We don't want to have two different versions of Ubuntu. And this is what we're working on right now, in bringing together the phone and desktop code bases to be just the one. For developers, going into the details, the journey towards OS convergence begins with Unity 8. For those of you who are not familiar with the Unity 8, Unity 8 is essentially our visual framework. It's not just the shell, it's not just what you see when you use Ubuntu on the phone and on the desktop. Well, Unity. Let me take away versions. So Unity is our shell. Unity is what you see when you work on the phone, when you work on the desktop, when you work testing your games. And it's also a set of technologies that are grouped under this umbrella. So we've got the display server. You might be familiar with Mir. We've got the whole APIs behind Unity. And we want Unity essentially to come, or Unity 8, which is the latest version, which is the version running on phones right now, to be deployed on any smart device that comes with Ubuntu installed. Right now there are two tracks, or there are two versions of Unity. We've got Unity 7, which is running on your familiar Ubuntu desktop, and then we've got Unity 8, which is the next generation that's running on phones. And Unity 8 is the part that we want to bring into the desktop and phase out Unity 7. I'm going to show this in more detail in a minute. And yeah, that's part of our unique proposition, a single framework, a single cohesive, homogeneous visual experience. We want a unique experience for app developers. We want to bring existing desktop application developers more into the mobile world as well. So if they use the Ubuntu SDK, they can extend their applications so that they can have mobile features, and they can essentially run on phones as well. Also for third-party developers, and these are the ones developing applications for the phone, we want them to have applications that can adapt to different form factors, to different devices. And again, that's another slide that perhaps might be interesting to everyone, because it talks more into the specifics. I want to set the expectations though. This is right now the roadmap, this is the plan, but this is something that we will be reassessing, reevaluating when we are in 16.04. Right now, these are Ubuntu versions. Right now we are on 15.10. We just released it a few days ago, which was another milestone in the. I think it was it marked the 11th anniversary of Ubuntu. It was our 23rd release, and our next release is going to be 16.04, which is going to be a long-term release. It's going to be supported for 5 years, so it's something that we need to make sure is really polished, which is something that we can support for the next 5 years, and we have to make sure that APIs are solid and the whole experience is solid as well. Right, so going into the specifics, that's the Ubuntu that you all love and know. Essentially, you see that line moving forward. So there's always going to be an Ubuntu. Ubuntu is going to be Debian-based or .deb-based, as it is right now. It's using Unity 7. We haven't made any commitments yet as to when Unity 8 will come to this rendition of Ubuntu. Right now, this is the focus, and we have to make sure that yes, we stay focused and we stay on the scope of the things that are possible. So, porting Unity 8, which is the next generation, the phone generation, into Ubuntu proper is something that we're not committing any timeline to yet. But as usual, as we always say, Unity 8 is open source. It's a really clean code base as well. So we will support any community initiative that is intending to port Unity 8 to Ubuntu proper. Now, this is where it starts getting interesting. The Ubuntu phone was born around 1410. I think it was even earlier, but nevertheless, it is something that we supported through 1504, through 1510, and we still keep supporting. We've got devices on the market, so we have to support our customers. But ultimately, the final goal is to converge the code bases, and there, enter Ubuntu Personal. Ubuntu Personal is essentially truly the final converged code base. It is something that combines Unity 8, which is the work that we started doing right now to bring these umbrella of technologies together. And it combines something that I haven't mentioned. I haven't introduced Snappy yet. If you're interested in Snappy, by the way, you should stay on to the next talk in this room, where we'll have Oli will have Sujivan, and we'll have Daniel, who just left the room, talking about Snappy. So Snappy meets phone, essentially. Snappy is a new rendition of Ubuntu. It's essentially a small core of Ubuntu that was born from the experience with the phone, but taking it to the next level. So it's a very, very self-contained core in which you can create apps on top, which are called snaps. Very much in a similar philosophy as the phone, containerized, separated from the system, and so on. So while we've started working on Ubuntu Personal as well, right now our main focus is to bring the Ubuntu phone together to the Ubuntu Personal code base. There will be a migration window in here, which will define, well, the work, the actual implementation that we do. And then there will be a support window as well for our existing customers. This, by the way, doesn't mean I should have put an arrow in here. This is not defined yet. We'll have to figure out this line of support for the existing code base of the Ubuntu phone. But essentially, the things or the key takeaways from here is that are that Ubuntu is going to remain the same, and then ultimately, when we reach our goal, we'll have Ubuntu Personal, which will be the version running on essentially on your smart devices and on your customer computers. Then finally, I'm just going to show you different, well, a bit of a gallery of different convergence experience. So here you've got your phone connected to a dock station with a keyboard and a mouse. Let's say they are Bluetooth ones. And as you see here, you've got the full desktop experience with LibreOffice, with the browser, and the mobility experience here with the dialer. There we've got again, the same setup, your pocket desktop, so to say, with the ability to do multitasking and to switch between applications with the spread. What you see here is a tablet running different applications, or rather, in this case, you see a scope running. It seems like either the nearby scope or like some kind of food scope. Never mind. You see the music app in here with the side stage. Side stage is essentially a way for phone applications to adapt to tablets as well. So those who can only run in phone mode can stay visible or pinned to the side. Even those that are adaptive, they can do that. So for example, the music app supports the full spread of the tablet, but it can be collapsed to have this mini player in here while you search for food. And then finally, you get convergent across devices. The music app running on the phone, on a tablet, and on the desktop. You see the adaptive layout. You see the mini player in the side stage with the full spread in here. And also this community-created application. Some of the guys you saw on that picture have been the drivers of the music app, and they've been working with the Canonical design team to make this possible as well. So this all thanks to their work. And then finally, I wanted to do a demo which crashed. We're still in very early stages. If it had been next week, it might have worked, but essentially, that was it.